All right, well, welcome our one attendee to our public meeting. Today's Tuesday, February 18th. I'm Sabrina Dunlap, and we have Ken Trom, Stephen Whitley, Jeff Donahoe, and Thomas Limpoma will be joining us hopefully in a half an hour or so. So first up is Points of Pride.
Sure. I have two. First, really to thank Kara for the minutes. When you meet in a week and we have public hearings, bond hearings, 3 of them, and
Sorry.
I think it was 12:30 at night. The email popped in from Kara that she had been working on the minutes. So thank you, even though you shouldn't be doing that. Thank you. So you had them. And then on Friday was the senior volunteer lunch. And thank Paula for putting that on. But it was kind of amazing to be there. There were about 30 volunteers there. The Slusher Center, except for Paula, who's a full-time employee, runs all the programs and everything, and the desk people are all volunteer. And it's pretty amazing how much is going on there all the time, whether it's exercise classes and yoga classes and mindfulness now and bingo, of course, which is one of the biggest events. And then all the people groups throughout the year that volunteered to do senior lunch on Wednesday. There's a lot going on there that is all volunteer. So
very nice. I also just want to thank DPW again for working on a Sunday into what day was it? Saturday into Sunday, all day Sunday, and pretty nasty storm.
28 hours they were out.
Wow. Yeah. So we appreciate them, and we're very fortunate to have such a good team in town. Anyone else?
I wanted to just thank the police department and Chief Hennessy. He had a couple members of the board and Neil out to the police department for some training on Saturday morning. It was really thought-provoking and interesting to see how they train and some of the situations they have to deal with, and very impressed with I mean, I already knew it was difficult to be a police officer, but getting that sort of firsthand exposure to some of the situations that they have to make very fast decisions in, it was really impressive. So thanks to those guys.
I was going to again thank the DPW, and I think I've seen sort of the ambulance going by my house a number of times. So I want to thank all emergency services people.
Okay. So we have quite a few administrative. First is approval of the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda of Tuesday, February 18th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, approval of the public meeting minutes of February 10th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have 4 non-publics. So the first one is, I don't remember if this one is sealed. This is not sealed. All right, so approval of the non-public meeting minutes from February 10th, 2025, session 1.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Approval of the non-public meeting minutes from February 10th, 2025, session 2.
Yeah, I've just seen it, so I will note that they're sealed and I'll move it.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and approval. Okay, so wait, that was session 2. Thank you. Session 3 from February 10th, 2025.
I'll move it and note they're not sealed.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
And finally, thank you. Finally, approval of the non-public meeting minutes from February 10th, session 4, and these are sealed. Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. All right. So we have our public appointment for SB2 hearing at 6. So we can go on to old business. First up is the Webster letter regarding the length of the lagoon cleanup fund.
Yes, so you had that so basically they would like to do 10 years, which David had mentioned at the last meeting. But they would like to get together to discuss that.
There was a discussion at the last meeting about could the bond be in two portions, one 10-year, one 20-year.
Yeah, that doesn't really work.
When do we have plenty of time to make.
You actually have 2
decisions.
years before the final, because it's the construction loan, but it's probably more for presentation purposes at town meeting than anything.
And there is a significant interest difference in the two, obviously.
The budget hearing update.
Yeah. The all of the financial items that we presented to the budget committee were unanimously supported. This.
Oh, thank you, Ken, for representing the town so well. I was at the budget committee meeting and I thought they did a really good job in a tough year, and commend the school board as well. They get a lot of tough questions. And I think Rob Nato and Ken both do a fantastic job. So thank you.
Just for purpose of the record, I guess, the budget committee, thanks to Don Houston and Neil and several others, put together a one-page summary that shows the estimated tax rate impact for the schools, the town, the county, putting everything together. Remembering for us, it's 2.54% is the overall increase. The schools is 7.99%. The overall recommended increase from the budget committee would result in a 5.98% increase on the tax rate. And the precincts are not included in that. But
Does that include all the warrant articles?
for us, yes, for both parties. I'll let the schools. Yeah,
I was
even
just-
though I
I'm
did,
curious, we're looking at apples and apples,
yeah,
if
I-
it's without articles or with articles.
I did support the schools at the end of the day because they did reduce their request by roughly $500,000 in between the last two presentations.
I think, as we heard at town meeting, this sheet that's been done, and then the budget committee's presentation that they want to do at the beginning of each meeting will be very helpful to give people the total picture before voting. I know at town meeting last year, people asked, so what does this mean with the school? And it's not really our job to answer that, nor should we really. But the budget committee, it is their job, so they'll be able to do that.
Unless somebody has any questions, that's all I was just going to say.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, that's it for old business. Do we have any new business?
Nothing new.
Okay, any town administrator updates?
Sure. The town report is about to go to the printers. We held it off because I don't know if you've heard, but the school board is voting tonight to move their meeting from was it the 9th to a week later, 8th to the 15th. The budget public hearing was too close to their meeting. And we always look, and certainly what NHMA puts out and even what DRA put out was by the 14th, and we met the 12th. And so for us, it was fine. But when you actually read the statute, the number of days didn't match. So they checked with DRA, who recommended that they move the meeting back. So we are waiting for we'll have the school stuff after they can sign their new warrant tonight. So the most likely the school meeting will be on that Saturday after the election. I've already mentioned the volunteer lunch, which was fun to do, and that was good. And I'll mention again, I mentioned it at one other meeting, that on March 4th at 2 p.m. at the library, the Friends of the Library are sponsoring Cookies with Cass, which is always a fun event. Once everything's ready, I go through the entire warrant, talk a little bit about municipal government in general, and it's usually not too long. People ask great questions. It's good preparation, just like the Rotary presentation is for town meeting, to find out what questions people are asking so we can be that much more prepared. So usually we get 20 to 30 people, so that's pretty good. We'll see what we get this year.
And you do an excellent job every year, and I agree. I always try to attend because I want to hear what questions come up.
He really
Just
wants
like-
to hear what the answers are, what I say they are. They're right.
I'll try to mimic those answers.
Yeah, no, I
At the budget committee, as I'm thinking back on it, not that we had many questions at all directly to the town, but I think the most significant one is, how sure are we're going to get the grants? And we can answer it as well as we can.
Anything else for town administrator updates?
that is it.
Okay, public forum, anyone, this is not our SB2 hearing, but if anyone would like to speak, now would be your chance. Right? We have two non-publics, and then we will come out of non-public and adjourn, and then we will start our SB2 hearing at 6. So I'll move, we go into non-public under 91A32 legal and also A personnel.
I'll second.
Thanks for stopping by.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. Stephen,
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Yes, and Jeff.
Yes.
All right.
We're gonna go in there so you can stay here. And so we'll stay live.
Is he, it's part of our meeting, right? So we're not gonna adjourn our,
Right.
okay.
Yep.
So we're out of non-public, back to our meeting. And we can now begin, oh, hello. We can now begin our hearing on adopting the official ballot referendum form of meeting, also known as SB2. So I think Neil has a short just overview.
Actually, Stevens,
Doing this? Okay,
are you doing it?
I get up.
If I can find it. Try that again.
We're recording again now.
We are.
You know, but
We are out of non-public.
you just did it though.
We did it. Yeah, our meeting is pretty much done except for SB2. That's right.
Yeah.
Must be-
Before you talk to me to not running.
This is really just to build suspense.
It's really, really big payoff at the end.
It's hard to read.
Yeah. There it goes.
Ta-da!
Still hard to read.
Display went away, Neil.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Good job.
Made it.
All right, so as Brittany said, this is the public hearing for SB2. We're having this public hearing because there was a petitioned article, it'll be Article 6, to have the town annual meeting be converted to what's called SB2. By law, this requires 3/5 vote of those in attendance at the business session. It's voting by paper ballot. The voting has to be open for at least an hour after discussion closes. And just a reminder that the business session this year is going to be Thursday, March 20th at 6 p.m. What is official ballot referenda known as SB2? It's a form of town meeting with 2 sessions. The first session is called the deliberative session. That's for the explanation, discussion, debate, and amendments to the proposed operating budget and warrant articles. And then once any amendments are voted in, they then go on the ballot as amended. Then there's the second session, that's the voting. That is done on the second Tuesday in March. And at that second session, you vote on all the warrant articles, as well as the election articles that are also on the ballot. You can only vote yes or no on the ballot. So how does this change or compare with what we do now? Deliberative session is pretty similar to the town meeting I think most of us are accustomed to. That's where people get together and they discuss and ask questions and hear from other people and propose amendments and vote on those amendments. That all happens at the deliberative session, but there's no actual voting. That is reserved for the second Tuesday in March when you vote by ballot. The deliberative sessions take place in late January or early February. It varies a little bit year to year, but it's about 4 to 5 weeks before the ballot voting. Let's see, absentee ballots can be utilized for the Tuesday election for the second Tuesday in March. And if the article that has the operating budget doesn't get a majority, then the default budget is assumed to be in effect unless the governing body, us, calls a special town meeting for the purpose of trying again to pass an operating budget. The default budget in particular, as I mentioned, is adopted when the proposed operating budget fails unless a special meeting is called. The governing body, so that's this board, we put together the default budget. Very simply, it's last year's operating budget minus one-time expenses, but there cannot be additions from the prior year's operating budget. And those additions are usually contractual obligations or other costs that are mandated by law. Debt service on a bond is a good example of one of those. And that last sentence, yes, it actually is kind of complicated what goes into the default budget, and there can be a fair amount of disagreement over that. But hopefully we don't need to get too far into the weeds of that. So that is it. And I think now we're open to hearing from all of you.
Yeah. So anyone online who wants to speak, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. And anyone in the room, if you can speak into the mic so we can pick you up on YouTube, that would be great. Come on up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Maura Carroll, and I live over at Peaked Hill. And I appear in opposition to official ballot voting. I have testified in the past, so I won't belabor it. But I did work in local government when the legislation was adopted. And I can tell you, after many public hearings, that a lot of the testimony was about being able to vote no on the school budget. And people didn't feel comfortable in voting no by a hand vote or some other method of voting. So they thought that having this go to official ballot would make it easier. Unfortunately, over time, what we've witnessed is that there's disengagement by individuals in the community because they think they don't have to be as active and as informed. And what we've also seen is that while there is a deliberative session, very few people go to that session. So it's a small group of people that actually can amend, and you don't have the robust discussion that you have at traditional town meeting. I've also lived in a community that had official ballot voting, and I'll tell you, it was nowhere near as active when it came to advising the select board on policy and adopting the things that the legislative body had the opportunity to adopt. So I urge my fellow community members and all of you to think very hard about this. I understand that people are concerned if they have to work or they don't have childcare, that they can't attend town meeting, but official ballot is not the only alternative. So I would urge people to have the conversation about what other form of government might work better if traditional town meeting doesn't work for people. And I thank you for the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, you guys.
Hi.
I am Emily Burak. I live on 1526 South Road, and I'm speaking against adopting SB2. I feel really strongly that community is the lifeline of our town. And in this fast-changing high-tech world where we're all behind screens, a lot of us aren't even going into an office for work. This opportunity for our town meeting is a huge gift. Not only do we all have the right and privilege to speak up about how our town is run, we get to see our neighbors. Check in, catch up with people that we might not have seen since the town meeting the year before. We listen to our neighbors' opinions, learn from each other's experiences live and in person, and see this amazing thing called community in action. Year after year, I hear the same argument for SB2. We've heard it over and over and voted it down. that our current structure is unfair because everybody can't get there. Some people might work, people might be able to get to town meeting. Of course, this is true. Of course. We all have different schedules. We all come from different walks of life. We have different responsibilities. But the exact same thing will be true with the deliberative session and getting to vote with SB2. We're a town of many people. We will never, ever find this magical, perfect day where we can all be heard and speak. The town meeting comes pretty darn close, and I urge us to stick with that. Sure, it can be messy. Sure, we lose our tempers. Sometimes we have to politely sit and listen to people that we don't agree with. But that is what living in a community is all about, and how we learn year after year to hear other opinions. And lastly, the New Hampshire town meeting is unique. It's an amazingly cool tradition. We're not New Jersey. We're not Minnesota. We are in New Hampshire. And this is a tradition we've had since the 1600s. The 1600s. Why would we get rid of this? I just feel it's a time-honored tradition, and it pulls us together instead of pulling us apart. So I urge people to not adopt this and keep Hopkinton the way it is, which is pretty darn good. Thanks.
Thanks, someone.
Hey guys, Alyssa McCann, 519 Crowell Road, and I think I'm here with more questions than like a statement per se. I have loved town meeting since I moved to town. And then I had a child. And my child is not neurotypical. And so dropping them off and leaving them with the amazing childcare that's provided during these meetings is not possible because there isn't the support there. And I love town meeting and I love the idea of all coming together, but I have met so many other parents in town who encounter the exact same barrier I do. And I am incredibly lucky. I have amazing in-laws in town who will watch my child for me. But not everyone has that. And what I'm wondering is what other options exist, if not SB2, for me having a vote when I can't get to town meeting, but I have an opinion. And I completely love history. I'm all about history. But I also recognize that the world evolves. And one thing I've really struggled with is the idea that we voted this down again and again and again. The population changes every year. Different people move in, other people move out. And so I just urge everyone to keep an open mind and consider, if not SB2, how do the people who don't have the physical accessibility to get there, whether for personal reasons, for work reasons, or for childcare reasons, engage in our town? I wonder, why do we believe that folks won't come to the deliberative session? Why wouldn't everyone who's incredibly passionate about showing up to town meeting also show up to the deliberative session? Like, we seem to have a collective assumption that we're going to have this like rock bottom fallout. But why wouldn't everyone, myself included, like who deeply cares, do everything we can to get there? So I heard someone mention that there were other options. I did a quick Google and I didn't see other options. So are there other options that I'm unaware of?
That is a great question. And we talked about this last year because I think it might have been more actually, but somebody asked about other options and making a town meeting more accessible, possibly like via Zoom or something. But unfortunately, currently with either SB2 or traditional town meeting, you cannot have like interaction remotely. So it's like you have to be there in person. And so I'm not aware. I mean, I was just looking up the number of SB2 towns versus traditional and some charter towns, which I believe is also a different type of government. There's only 9 of those in the state. And so I don't know if others have heard of any, I'm not aware of anything in the legislature to create another option. I will say that we hear many of the same arguments each year. And so part of our effort to make town meeting sort of more accessible And perhaps maybe less annoying to have like back-to-back Saturday mornings or, Saturday all day. We last year, for the first time in a while, moved the meeting from a Saturday morning to a Thursday evening, and turnout was a lot higher. And I generally heard anecdotally positive feedback about it. And we do provide childcare. Now, obviously that is not helpful for you, it sounds like, but I think the imperfect answer is we can't make it work for everyone. And I don't think any form of
I guess
voting
I
is perfect for
wonder
everyone.
why something that would give someone like me the option for absentee voting, right? Like a 12-hour window to get there, to trade off with my partner, and or the ability to vote outside of those given hours by registering ahead of time. And again, I love town meeting, and I wouldn't have thought this way until I was faced with the idea of what does it look like to not have a say in our town budget. And the only reason I'm able to be here tonight is because my partner isn't here. He's at home with our child. And so do we only get half a vote at town meeting because one of us has to be with him? So that's what I struggle with. So I'm not up here saying like I'm for SB2 or I'm against SB2. I'm saying I am struggling with what this means for our town. And the number of other parents I know who are in the exact same boat, who have never come out to a town thing before, who I've met through the amazing networks as you have a neurodivergent child and you get to meet all the other parents of other neurodivergent children, and how they have never, they didn't even know the select board was, like they've never had the chance to participate because of that barrier where their life is so busy with what they're focused on. So open to suggestions, open to ideas, open to solutions, but just want to know that every vote counts, and being scared of how someone else is going to vote is not a good reason not to give them a vote. And being nervous about what their decision is going to be if we didn't have a chance to talk to them isn't necessarily a good reason, because the way that we could vote is we could bring our child and leave them in the car and we could sit there until it's time to vote, and one of us could run in. And then in that case, we weren't a part of the discussion. We didn't get to engage, but we somehow flip-flopped enough to get there and vote. So please consider what the other alternatives are and how we might be able to participate.
I just want to note that a lot of people don't know what the select board is. So it's not just
That's
parents.
fair, that's fair.
No, I appreciate your comments,
Yeah.
very
Thanks,
thoughtful.
Jen.
And I think, I won't speak for the rest of the board, but I think it's not super clear cut. It's not super obvious that one form is better than another per se, but what I have read about SB2 towns, your question about deliberative session, why wouldn't people show up? What I have seen is the evidence shows that engagement drops tremendously with deliberative session. So I think, that is a big consideration, because if you can't make it to town meeting, you probably can't make it to deliberative session, and there are challenges with that. So anyway, I appreciate your.
Oh, I guess I'm confused about like, if everyone who is so passionate about town meeting, why wouldn't they also go to the deliberative session?
I think if you want to come back up and talk, I think that's great.
Could I,
Can't pick you up on the,
could I just do it?
yes.
So some of those charter communities have, I know of one that has a hybrid of SB2 and traditional town meeting. So there are options that towns can take to look at to do that.
That's
The
interesting.
town of Peterborough, if you look at their charter, I don't want to quote it too much because I don't want to get it wrong, but I believe the select board has options on certain articles, whether to put them on the under their charter, on the ballot, or at the deliberative session. And then if for example, the budget doesn't pass after the deliberative session at the voting, it goes to the town meeting, which is actually then held. And I believe bonds are required to go to traditional town meetings. So there are options out there.
That's good to know. That was Peterborough, you said?
That is Peterborough
Okay.
in their charter, which is fairly simple. So Maura probably knows more about what other towns are doing than I do, but
I do.
hi.
Neil Irvin, Main Street. Like Laura, municipal government employee. I've been in municipal government for the better part of 12 years. And I rise in opposition to becoming an SB2 town. I've just gone through deliberative session in the town that I'm town administrator for. Town of just over 4,000 people. We had 20 people show up for deliberative. What you get with SB2 is much greater turnout. We will see somewhere in the region of 800 votes cast. They're not informed voters. You get an informed voter at town meeting where you sit in a room and you listen to debate. What you get with an SB2 town is, well, I read on Facebook. Somebody told me. And you get an uninformed voter. And you end up with a very bad product. So happy to take questions from anybody in the audience. Like I say, I've been in municipal government. This is my community. I've been here for a year. So to your point of the community changes, yes, it does. But definitely opposed to becoming an SB2 town. Thank you.
Thank you. See Bob LaPree's hand. Is that, oh, sorry, was it Matt? You can go after Bob. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Sabrina. Hi, board. Hello, townsfolk. I'm Bob LaPree. I live on Highland Avenue in Kentucky. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't used this setup. I personally don't like SB2 because it reduces the ability for people to do the back and forth. But we do have a serious problem of accessibility for people that have, well, particularly mobility problems. As you guys know, I have to make a serious effort to come to meetings while being in a wheelchair. But I'm not the only person like that, and that isn't really even the it isn't really the need for something as severe as what I have. It's just people being able to come out. You know, March can be an awful time of month of the year. Anyway, so what I want to say is that we have the technology to at least allow people to watch the proceedings, you know, the regular town meeting. And we also have the technology where people can contribute just like I am right now. Now, the thing is, I'm not sure if you operate under a requirement to have Zoom available, or if it's because you choose to have that kind of availability. What I'm getting at is that the town meeting is the most open public meeting we have, and if it can't be Zoomed, that does not make any sense, because it contradicts what we have decided is legal to conduct town business over electronically by Zoom. Now, I know we have serious state law reform to make it so that you could actually not only Zoom, but you could actually vote, you know, through various security ways, methods. Anyway, so I think it's important that we be able to Zoom town meeting, both not only watching, but also being able to contribute. So if now, Sabrina, you seem to say that the state didn't allow that, but I'm curious, is it specifically stating that people can't address the meeting by Zoom or by electronic means? You know, it could be a speakerphone too, you know. Anyway, do they specifically do that, or is that?
I think that it's, the statute is clear about how we can conduct the meeting. I'm pretty sure that's the issue. So I don't think it says like you cannot use electronic means, but it is.
But we're only able to do what the state allows us to
Right.
do.
So unless they changed it legislatively, enabling towns to adopt Zoom or some other electronic or like virtual attendance, I don't think we're not permitted to do it.
Yeah,
Well,
I
you-
will say, Bob, that last year I watched town meeting from 8,500 miles away. I was in Saipan on the day of the meeting, and I sat in my hotel room and watched the meeting.
We do broadcast it so people can watch it, but can't participate.
Right, because there's no way to authenticate voters.
I think
Yeah.
it'd be a good idea to query the Secretary of State and see if this is something that they would consider as being legitimate or legal. And all I'm talking about is just being able to contribute, not to vote, because I know that's a whole statutory thing. So I would appreciate it if you would pursue that with the Secretary of State, because it's no
Okay.
big deal to do it.
I'll just comment that we were intending to use our poll pads to check people in at town meeting. And the Secretary of State got wind of that. Other towns have been doing that for a while and has said, we don't allow that. Now, why it's okay at elections, but not at town meetings. So we'll be using our paper checklist again. So I would not say that the Secretary of State is very progressive as far as use of electronics.
Well, okay, and that's too bad because Scanlon's been around a while. If you would just speak to them, I would appreciate it, and asking you to do that. Okay,
Thank you, Bob.
you
Thanks,
bet.
Bob.
Yep, take care.
Elizabeth, you were up.
Elizabeth Sides, 265 Crowell Road. I am, as I have been for the last couple of years since this has come up every year, I'm against SB2 for multiple reasons, but I think my first reason I actually never thought of until a friend mentioned it yesterday or the day before. The arguments that some say legitimately that they can't come to a one meeting on Saturday, or last year it was Thursday, and it's again going to be Thursday at night. So it's not during the weekend, during the morning, that didn't work for a lot of people for various reasons. One meeting. So yet they want SB2, and we're going to have 3 deliberative sessions. Is that right? Or 2? Just 1. Okay. So,
Unless the school also adopted it, and then they would have a deliberative session and.
okay.
Yeah.
So even just one meeting, I guess I don't understand what's the difference. If they can't come to a one meeting where we're all together, you can openly ask questions, people can amend the budgets if you have, enough people to second that, where we know from facts of other towns that have adopted it, that you get a very small number at the deliberative session. So that's not a guess. That's not fear. That's facts. So I'm not saying that definitely would happen in Hopkinton, but if that's the trend for a lot of towns that adopt SB2, I'm not interested in that. No thanks, because that scares me that someone who is not any of you on the board that we elected, or a budget committee member who gave input on your budget, could go to a deliberative session and vote, amend to slash your budget or increase it. I don't think that I have the right to do that either. And if that person has enough people behind them to do that, then that's what we're voting on. I'm not interested in doing that. What I would love if you had this option, but it doesn't sound like you do, your budget that you put forth, that we voted for all of you to do as your job, to take care of the town. The budget committee saw it, whether they vote for it or against, it's your budget. If we had an up or down vote on the ballot, I would be all for that. It's not about suppressing votes. So I want that to be really clear, because I am not a Facebook watcher, but a lot of my friends are. And everything that I see pro SB2 is not to increase a budget for your town, for this town. It's to decrease. And then voter suppression. Absolutely not. I don't want to take anyone's vote away. I would love it if your budget that you put forth, I could vote up or down. And if it doesn't pass, then you go back to the drawing board. But that's not an option here. That's how I grew up in Maine. This is new for me, moving here. So I like the options that we have, SB2, maybe the charter thing that you're talking about. Fine, let's look into it. But if my option is SB2 and a deliberative session or town meeting, I'm still for town meeting. That could change later, but I'm going to vote against it. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hi.
Jetty, 259 Gage Hill Road. And I'm also against the adoption of SB2, but I had a question about a hybrid system. You know, in 2020, it was a week before we found out the result of the federal election. It was a week or 5 days. And this time I think it was immediate, but it could have been a number of days. The thing about the town meeting and a deliberative session both is you get to change the articles. The populace gets input into the articles. Obviously, with the town meeting, there's more input because people don't show up for the deliberative session. I guess my question is, if you didn't release the results of the votes at town meeting, had people discuss them, had people vote, because the warrant articles change at town meeting. You can't just publish them, right? It changes. But if then you publish them and ask people if people couldn't come, if they could watch it on Zoom, or even better, if they could participate on Zoom, they can't vote, then they could put in their absentee ballot and you could announce the result a week later. I could wait. You know, I guess that's the question, is maybe a hybrid system is something that could be done. That people are saying that we really want to get a chance to vote and we want input. Well, maybe we can have our cake and eat it too. Just a thought.
It's interesting. Thank you. Hi.
Hi again. Alyssa McCann, 519 Crowell Road. I had some clarifying questions. As I understand it, even though I think the room is full of really cool ideas around how we could vote, I would love the idea of being able to vote on Zoom or have absentee balloting. We are limited by state statute, correct? And so to the best of our knowledge, between Neil's ChatGPT brain and our Googling, we have three options, which is town meeting as it stands, SB2, which has been discussed, and then the Peterborough charter, which sounds like deliberative, voting, and then town meeting.
I just want to be clear, that's what they've done in their charter. There are options. A charter is doing it differently, but it's up to each town to decide within guidelines how that is done.
Sorry, so every town can edit their own charter to set up their voting, regardless of what the states.
To some extent, within guidelines.
There's guardrails.
There's guardrails about what sort of options you can do. So the Peterborough example, I think that may have happened before some of these guardrails were put in place. So I'm not even sure that the Peterborough option remains a viable one.
Got it. And I'm curious, I heard when we were talking about the deliberative session that people can come in and make edits. And so it's not voting up and down on yours. In the town meeting, could the same thing happen? Could a group of voters come in, take your budget, turn it upside down, and then vote to approve it?
Yes.
Okay, so the same exact thing can happen in deliberative or town. The difference being that after it happens, then the rest of the town votes on it.
Yes, but
There's a
Yeah.
very critical missing piece though.
Yeah.
Which is if it gets voted down, the requirement is that we then have to compromise and come up with an acceptable budget. Whereas with SB2, if it gets voted down, it goes to a default budget. And that is not an option
Mhm.
for, that's something that gets removed out of the
And
normal
if the
process.
default budget were to happen, and I'd heard, and this was like many, many moons ago, that for the most part, the default budget will be less than the budget that we're proposing, but there is a world, a very sunny world where the default budget is more than what you're proposing, right? For whatever reason. And the town could theoretically, or you could put forward to re-vote on it, right? Like it's not the end all be all, like the gate hasn't shut and we're not stuck on that road. If we felt like those slashes were too deep, we could pull another vote on it. You're shaking your head no, but he's shaking his head yes.
Wait, are you talking about
The budget gets voted.
What are you talking about? A traditional meeting or?
Nope. So let's say let's say we could do an electoral vote, right? And we did a ballot vote and the default budget got put in and it had deep cuts compared to what we needed. Is there any mechanism to have a revote in the town or are we stuck with that?
Yes.
In an SB2 world?
SB2 world, we can call a special town meeting to try to get a alternative proposed budget passed.
But isn't it limited? Isn't it like you have, it's restrictive in terms of what you can call, or you can just call another meeting? I thought that it was like for emergency funding.
That's separate. This is a specific statutory authority for a limited special town meeting just to propose an alternative operating budget.
And then it's voted up or down in that special meeting or?
Yeah.
And it's not voted on by a separate, you don't repeat.
Oh, is it
SB2?
another SB2
Yeah.
process? I think it is. I'm not sure.
Okay.
That'd be just lovely to know because it had seemed like in the conversation that the gate was shut, right? That the
Yeah.
vote would happen and then we'd all be
I think
stuck
that's
with it and there'd be
typically what happens,
no.
though, is that I think typically it's a deliberative session. That is what goes to the voter on the ballot. And then yes, it's an up or down vote. I
Right,
think that's
right.
Typically, I
Right.
was unaware that this.
It's
special-
still an up or down vote, but instead of accepting the default budget, we would have
Right,
the
you
option of
could
calling a
Call a
special
special,
meeting.
okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to come back to one other distinction that
Yeah.
to me is very significant. In SB2 communities, the amending process, I don't know the reasoning why precisely, but there's just far lower turnout. And so a very, very small percentage of the population can show up and make really drastic changes to
Absolutely.
all those money articles. And then when it comes time for the actual voting, when you have that absentee option and there's lots of participation, you can no longer make any changes. It's just an up or down vote at that time. And so if you're not able to come out to deliberative for whatever reason,
Mhm.
then you lose control over, the budget that you're gonna. vote up or
But it's the
down.
same way for anyone who can't go to town meeting. They lose control
True,
over the
but
budget.
historically, at least, there's far greater attendance at traditional versus.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, everything you're saying, yes. I just want to be clear that if we were looking at it just from a like individual person's experience.
Yep.
If they can't go to town meeting, they lose control of the budget. It's like if you can't go to deliberative, you can lose control of the budget. Basically, anytime you're unable to participate in the democratic process, you can lose control of the budget, whatever your hopes or dreams might be. I think one other thing I've noticed as we're discussing this, that just makes me concerned in my heart is the assumptions we're making about why other people do or do not do things. One thing that's always struck me is anytime we make assumptions about other people's intent, I mean, immediately we're going to be tripping over ourselves. So I would just encourage us as we continue to talk about it to focus instead on what would allow the most number of Hopkinton residents to reasonably participate and to remember that we don't know what is happening in someone's life or in their head or why they're doing what we're doing. And when we assign intention to action without letting each individual person write their own narrative, we end up in very dark places. So I would encourage us to continue to focus on the logistics of what makes us the healthiest town, to not make assumptions that those of us who can't make it to a meeting are uninformed, to look at the data of what has happened in other towns and learn from that and say, we're Hopkinton, like, how can we do better? Because we are Hopkinton and we can do better. And again, I'm not saying I'm for SB2. I know I like clearly sound like I am. I am for an evolution, and it sounds like there might be other options that I would like to explore. And many of the ones I would like are not legally available, but I'm simply saying I would like us to take the lens of what would it look like if every single person of voting age in Hopkinton was able to participate. And we didn't make any assumptions about why they can't make it to a meeting on a Thursday or a Saturday. And instead just sought to like create the biggest, widest net possible of participation. That's all.
I love engagement. Thank you, Alyssa. Janet, you were standing and then there's a hand on iPad. You can go. Do you want to? You can go first. I think you were standing before the hand went up.
First, Janet Ward, 82 Watchtower Road. And I am for town meeting. I am not a supporter of SB2 because, and this I haven't heard a great deal about. When a town is an SB2 town, there is a deliberative session scheduled. And we've heard that they're not very well attended. But my concern is the time between that deliberative session and ballot voting. Because during that time, all kinds of information can be distributed. Some of it may be helpful and informative. Some of it may be erroneous and disinformation. At town meeting, when questions are asked, there are people who have hard information. And so you're given facts, you're given information you need to vote intelligently. And so my concern is that lag time between the deliberative session and ballot voting. And there's nothing to be done. I mean, all kinds of mischief can happen during that period of time. In terms of childcare, we can't do much about your situation this year, but given what you vividly described, we have a year before next town meeting. And I have some thoughts on how we can address, childcare and that sort of thing. And maybe between now and then, we can have a conversation and explore some possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Janet.
Somebody online iPad had your hand up if you want to speak. I don't know who you are, but
Decided not to.
anyone online, feel free to put your hand up. All right, iPad is back. If you could just let us know who you are.
Hey, this is Rita. Hang on. Julian, please be quiet. Sorry, I got a 3-year-old here. And I've got
Rita?
poor internet connection. Yes, sorry,
Hi,
I have
Rita.
poor internet connection.
Okay.
Julian, please be quiet. Or I'm gonna turn it off. I'm trying to make the TV work at the same time. I just want to talk to the advantage of SB2 because year after year we hear how the deliberative session will diminish or go away. And I have been to deliberative sessions in Henniker, no other towns, just Henniker, that is an SB2 town, and they've not diminished. They're actually very well attended. And I don't understand either board giving
We lost you a little bit there, Rita. I don't know if you're breaking up or
It's our connection.
okay. We're having trouble.
Did they say?
It's Rita Blanchard. Hey, Rita, we lost you, I think, but I did gather your comment about the advantages to SB2 and mentioning Henniker's deliberative session. If you want to call back in with if it's clear, feel free to, but we lost you, I think. Okay. Hi, Amanda.
Amanda Gilman, 168 Westridge Circle. I just want to reiterate the clarification that came up that deliberative session, that the hijacking of a budget, as it has been phrased, but the deliberative session and the town meeting everyone has the right to vote up and vote down the budget, as was the reference of the town of Croydon, which was not an SB2 town at the time. The people, a few select people came in and voted down the school budget and grossly cut it, like unsustainably. And had that town been an SB2 town, it would have gone to the ballot and they could have survived on the default budget. And I say survive because I recognize that it's not necessarily where we want to be. I have kids in the school. I want the schools, I want them funded, but I also want people to be able to vote. And I sat at the polls this year on November 5th. I was there for all but 2 hours. I was there the whole day. 4 handicap spots out front there. There wasn't a single time during the day when there was more than one spot open. It was a revolving door of grandma and grandpa and people coming in wheelchairs and walkers. And it was constant all day long. And they came to vote and it was awesome. But they can't, and I asked people I knew. I asked Owens, Joab Owens' family. I said, so good to see you. But she said, no, I can't go to the meetings. I can just come to vote, right? Like it's a thing. She comes to vote every year. And even if, let's say they could just come in to vote for a minute, we don't even have enough handicap accessible spaces, right? Like, well, there's literally 4 and it was busy. So the ability, the accessibility and the voting is a very real problem. So what I hear here, a lot of is clinging to or holding on to nostalgia. I get that. I used to work town meeting. I sold snacks. I love it. That's why I have the chutzpah to stand up and cut $150,000 off the school. Remember that last year, $150,000 off the school, because I didn't want to re-roof the Maple Street just for solar panels when the roof was perfectly good. So I tried to hijack that budget at town meeting or at school district meeting, and I got voted down. But I have the chutzpah to do it because I grew up with it and I love it. I do. But that can still happen in the deliberative session. And then in terms of misinformation and uninformed voters, I postulate or I question everyone to think about how well they know the zoning amendments, the 18 zoning amendments, and I may be, but that have been condensed, how well they know them, and they're going to go vote for them on Tuesday. Have you all looked at them? Do you understand what we're voting for? There's a lot to unpack in those voting amendments. And there's a lot of time for misinformation to spread on the internet and on Facebook right now about what those zoning amendments entail. So yes, lack of information is real. That is why towns who adopt SB2 and do it well, like Ware, put out a mailer. Their mailer was 30 pages last year. Mind you, that would contribute to a budget increase. I get that. Okay. But their mailer was 30 pages. It went through every amendment. It went through all the zoning amendments. So actually you could have informed voters showing up to vote at the polls about zoning amendments that they actually understand. So where there's a will, there's a way. And if informed voters is truly what you want, then a voter guide, be it SB2 or not, is where we should be. There needs to be a voter guide. Because even if you show up at town meeting or school district meeting, I'm telling you, you are not informed. The informed voter is the one who's been to the meetings, who Zooms them all like I do, who listens to them in their car, who understands the nuances that the $150,000 was to re-roof a perfectly good roof for future solar panels, right? Like not just, we're going to go solar panels, we're going to destroy a good roof and spend money so we can have solar panels. Okay, so I understood that. That wasn't brought up in the meeting. That was me being an informed voter. That happens from people who are engaged and who care. And I think that's the community that we have. And the anecdotal evidence about attendance drops off at deliberative sessions, if there is actual, I would love to see it. I would love to see it because to me that is anecdotal, and I've heard anecdotes of the other, that people, an engaged town, an informed and educated town who wants to be that way, continues to show up to the deliberative session and then still gives all of their residents the right to vote. So when people discuss SB2, I informed all of us to I would hope that we all become informed about it and we actually understand what it is that we're voting yes or no for. And that the deliberative session is the same as town meeting, except it doesn't have a final number. And the most important part, if either of them ends up in a poop show and we don't like the outcome, you wonderful people can spend more of your free time making another budget for us. And I'm sorry, but that's how the process works. It's democratic and there is a safety valve. There's an outlet in both of them. But one of them provides everyone the right to vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
I just make a real limited response. You were talking about the zoning amendments.
Yes.
And I just want people to understand that if you're in an SB2 community, you don't have the ability to change those zoning amendments. And in many instances, they're not even discussed at the deliberative session.
So for clarification, I only invoked the discussion of the zoning amendments to point out that people who will go to vote on Tuesday, March 11th on the zoning amendments perhaps are not informed about what is in those zoning amendments. So I'm trying to draw a correlation, but yes, SB2 has nothing to do with zoning amendments. So thank you.
While we're on the subject of voting amendment or zoning amendments, I desperately wish we could vote on zoning amendments at town meeting. It is complicated. So it would be great to have someone present them and then talk to them. I would love that.
We're a voters guide. It's fantastic. They describe all the zoning amendments. So you feel it.
Thank you, Amanda.
It may not be as good as Ware's, but on that table is a summary sheet and on the website is a sheet describing all the zoning. We do not mail it to everyone.
Because of budget concerns.
Mueller's on the Main Street. We're awesome. Love Naomi. Even the fact that she's had a default budget for 4 years, even as well informed as our voters are from the voters guide. Can take ours to water and make it drink. I send out a voters guide every year to every resident in my town. I'm on a 2nd year of default. You mentioned the Secretary of State won't let you use the poll books, and I'm going to turn to Stephen and enjoy being able to talk to him without having to pay for the privilege for once. It's wonderful. Correct me if I'm wrong. SB2 has to be voted on by official ballot.
Yes.
So why couldn't you use the poll books if it's an official ballot? Just saying, might be worth pushing back at the Secretary of State. You're required to vote by official ballot, therefore it's an election, therefore you should be able to use the poll books. Just throwing that out there. Thanks.
Amanda, did you have a follow-up? I assume.
What town? He said my town.
Oh, sorry, I'm a town administrator. I live in Hopkinton. I'm a town administrator in Hopkinton.
Northwood, that's what I meant.
Northwood. Okay, thank you. Anyone else online? Feel free to raise your hand. Anyone else in the room? Well, thank you, everyone who came out. Appreciate your thoughtful comments and questions and discussion, and yeah, and we will formally close the public hearing on SB2. We don't have to take any action right now, right?
No, because you already.
Right, because we had to finalize our warrant articles, so I would just say if anyone has any parting thoughts, I know we've discussed this a lot. I would just like to say I appreciate the varying perspectives and thought-provoking conversation. And I think it's a challenge because I fully recognize that traditional town meeting is not perfect. I do not think SB2 is perfect. And I don't know what I was trying to think through, like what would my, optimal voting situation be if we had traditional town meeting and SB2 didn't exist. I'm actually not sure what alternative I would come up with, but recognizing neither is perfect. The voters will decide on March 20th for the town's SB2 vote. So anyway, does anyone else have any other parting thoughts?
Sure. One thing that hadn't been mentioned that citizens have the opportunity to is participate in the budget committee. That's Zoom, that we take comments that way. We had last week the final budget committee meeting of the year where we went through all of the budgets, and then the committee voted on what would be presented at town and school and precinct meetings. I mean, between in person and online, there were probably 100 people there. And next year I'd say maybe go for 200.
Because you're not gonna be there.
I will not be there. No walk.
Yeah. Well, Ken, actually, that raises a point. I also just want to emphasize that the amount of time and energy and work that goes into both the school and the town budget is significant. And it does start like way back. I mean, it starts for Neil going to department heads in like the end of summer, basically. August. And we do for a time meet weekly to discuss our budget. And unfortunately, we do not get a lot of participation. I don't think it's that much better for the school. But I do note sometimes people come to like the final budget meeting and are like, well, why didn't we talk about this earlier? And it's like, well, we did a lot. And I appreciate people are busy and there's only so many meetings you can go to. I do appreciate that. And it is hard to keep track of all the things going on in town, but I do want people to know that it is a lengthy process. It is one that is open, and we really appreciate when people show up and pay attention. So I just wanted to put that plug in.
And I'll put another plug in about the budget committee also. That committee, other than the summer, it meets year round. And the first meeting will probably be shortly after town meeting, maybe in April. And the committee will get an understanding, looking at the financials for the schools, the town, to see how they're spending money compared to budget. You know, just is there any abnormalities and all? And then as the process proceeds, the budget committee goes to weekly meetings, certainly. So the budget committee really digs into things, and as well as the select board, the school board.
Also note, in the town report, we've always had the narrative warrant, which is like a voter's guide, and we are revamping that as a voter's guide. It will still be in the town report, but it will also be available before. We're not mailing it to everybody, but it is there. It's just about done to try to get more information out. Actually, traditionally, the town reports were mailed to everyone in town, and then they were stacked in the post office in the recycling bins miles high, which doesn't seem to make sense, but we do make everything available online too.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for showing up and being part of the process.
Oh, wait, we're done talking?
Well, we're done with our public hearing,
Oh, okay,
and we have to adjourn.
Got it.
Unless you have something for other, because you missed other.
No, I think that there's just one other thing I want to say though, because I think there's been a couple recurring themes, but there has been a theme of people being uninformed. And I think it's easy to think of that in a like a malicious light, but I think there's also a lot of very nuanced, very easy ways to be misinformed. And I talked about this the last time in this conversation, but when I first moved to town, my first town meeting is when the Bates building came up, and I entered the building thinking like, why do we care about this stupid building? And there was a lot of very passionate back and forth, and there was a lot of good stories and a lot of good context. And those are things that would not have come up in like a voter's guide that's trying to just present a subject. There was a lot of detail and caring thoughts that made me definitely change my mind, not just once, but multiple times throughout the conversation. And so it's that sort of thing that I'm very worried would get lost. And to me, when I think of people not being informed, it's more in that light and less of kind of like a malicious Facebook light, even though I do think that's a problem. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's cool. We can also motion to adjourn.
No, appreciate your comment. All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.